So seating yourself in a position that is upright, stable, and reasonably comfortable. We all have different conditions. Some people have chronic pain they're dealing with or various aches and pains. So find the best position for you. It's also very possible to meditate standing up, lying down if one has a chronic back pain issue, and also walking. Right now we're doing sitting meditation. So don't be afraid to shift a little bit, settle, rock back and forth just a little bit. Find that place where, for this time being, you experience your body as upright, in a posture that dignifies, that embodies your dignity. And who you are as a human being. If seated on a chair, let the soles of the feet rest on the carpet beneath your feet. If seated on the floor, take a moment of mindfulness about your knees in particular. We don't want any stress to be on the knees. So if you feel that you're really stressing your knees, please change position. You might try a kneeling posture if you're cross-legged, or switch to a chair. Take good care of your knees. And feel the alignment of the body. The hands can rest on the legs, or be clasped comfortably in the lap. The eyes are gently closed or left slightly open to let in the natural light. And if your eyes are open, the gaze is soft and unfocused. And the eyelids partially lowered. And as much as possible, summoning an attitude towards your meditation practice that is one of kindness and compassion for yourself and for others. Often people wonder, am I getting this right? And then they become fearful. This type of meditation is an organic process which will unfold naturally. And you don't need to think about mistakes, only learnings. So just learn from everything that you're experiencing. We might begin, now that we're in our meditation posture, by listening to sounds. We can notice that these sounds come and go, begin and end. They may change in volume or not. And that we don't need to do anything to create these sounds, to change them, or to stop them. They're simply phenomena that is occurring in the present moment. And now you're invited to simply observe. So mindfully observe, and this means with an open, spacious, and non-judgmental awareness. We're simply observing physical sensations. And just noticing any sensations of warmth or coolness, tingling, numbness. Often a stronger sensation are the points of contact. So we might notice the feeling of pressure where our bottom or buttocks meet the surface beneath them, the chair seat, or the meditation cushion or bench. So feel that nice solid contact, that pressure. Feel your weight. You might also notice the physical sensation where the soles of the feet contact the surface beneath them. Where the legs contact the meditation mat. Where your hands contact the surface beneath your hands. And even the sensation of clothing against your body. And now, if this works for you, becoming particularly aware of the physical sensation and movement in the body produced by breathing in and breathing out. The breath is natural. We're simply noticing with more sensitivity, the gentle rhythm as we breathe in, perhaps noticing that the stomach or abdomen area and chest rise or expand. Breathing out, those areas subside or gently fall. might notice the sensation of the breath in the nostrils or right above the upper lip. Breathing in through the nose, usually a sensation of coolness as the air enters the body. Breathing out, the air has been warmed and maybe a bit more moist. Or your experience may be different. Simply notice what is there. It's completely normal for many thoughts and sometimes emotions to arise. And when you notice that that's happening, simply return to observing the sensation of breath in the body or physical sensations. And if it helps you concentrate, you might make a very light mental note, meaning just quietly, silently say in your mind as you breathe in, rising, and as you breathe out, falling. Or as you breathe in, say in. As you breathe out, say out. Breathing at your own pace. you may experience physical sensations, thoughts, and emotions that are pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant or unpleasant, meaning neutral. If you like, you might mindfully notice when you are experiencing a pleasant sensation or thought, an unpleasant sensation or thought. And this takes extra awareness, a neutral sensation or thought. In a moment, I'll invite the meditation bell. And if you like, you can reflect upon this gatha, which means a meditation poem from Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, when you hear the sound of the bell. Listen, listen. This wonderful sound brings me back to my true home. So this Dharma talk is called Dharma as Healing Medicine. In Shantideva's text, he says, "May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed." And by sick beings in the world, we're meant to understand that this could be physical sickness, this could be mental illness, this could be emotional illness, anything which is not a state of optimal well-being. And this is a part of a vow. This is another way of stating the great vow of the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva, in the tradition of Dharma, or the teachings of the Buddha in Buddhism, is a great being, who dedicates themselves to returning lifetime after lifetime in order to help all beings who are suffering proceed and progress into a state of non-suffering. So my own vows, which I took in 1982 in the Zen Buddhist Temple of Toronto, Canada, with my original teacher, Zen Master Samu Sinim, and a visiting monk from Korea who was a kind of dignitary monk person. They gave us the 10 Bodhisattva precepts and our vows to accomplish this great work, which we can only do together. We can only do in community, because for each of us, whether we've taken the vow or not, undoubtedly, if you're here, you're a spiritual being, and you are trying to help yourself. You are trying to create a better world. I just know that to be true, and for that to be accomplished to the extent it can be, we need one another. Just to state the obvious, as people of color, as human beings, and as sentient beings who have sensation, we live in a world where we suffer wounding, trauma, and intergenerational trauma, and injuries because of oppression. So needless to say, most of us are probably aware of the current conflict in Gaza, which is exciting much strife and heated debate. A 72-hour ceasefire begins on Friday. I don't know what the time difference is. It may already have begun or be about to begin. And we're also aware of violence that is close to us, such as drive-by shootings in Oakland and families evicted from their homes due to gentrification in the Mission District in San Francisco. And we could go on and we could list many forms of both individual and structural violence and oppression that we're aware of directly and indirectly in our everyday lives. That just comes along with being a person of color in the United States. There are also many injuries that are occurring which we don't know about, that we don't have the awareness, not because we don't care, but because we don't have that information, and yet we can extrapolate from what we do see and what we do know to understand that it is going on, along, I hope, with joy and with happiness and people getting jobs and babies being born joyfully, all of these things going on. However, the Dharma was meant, if we were all perfectly happy and if we were all perfectly content, there would be absolutely no need for anyone to have to do meditation or to do these practices. These practices are actually meant to decrease suffering and to help us to understand the roots of afflictive suffering. And there are so many ways in which suffering manifests in each of our lives. I'm hoping that because the topic of tonight's talk is Dharma as healing medicine, that we're all here because we seek to heal ourselves and so that we can help to heal others. We need to heal ourselves at the same time as or before we help others to heal themselves. And this is kind of like, what they say when you're on the airplane, if you've ever been on an airplane, and they talk to you about if the cabin begins to depressurize and the oxygen masks fall down from those little compartments that we hope we never see them fall down from, that, if you're with a child or you're traveling maybe with an older person who is ill or something like that, that you put on your own mask first before you help the other person on with their mask. Now, as many of you know, I'm a mother. I have an only child who's now an adult, 25 years old. And when he was little, he was in a co-op preschool in Oakland. So I worked with a lot of children, and then I volunteered for many years in the Oakland public schools that he attended. So I worked with a lot of kids. And it's very counterintuitive to me as a mother to think that if there's some kind of emergency that I should put on my own oxygen mask first. However, there is a wisdom to that, and that's a really useful metaphor for us to look at if perhaps our friends wonder, or we ourselves might wonder, well, with all that's going on in the world and all of the things that I could be using my precious human life to be out there taking some kind of direct action on, why am I sitting in meditation? Why am I doing these practices of inner awareness? And we can know for sure that this is our way of putting our own oxygen mask on first, and it does not exclude. In fact, it usually leads to action in the world, because as we become aware of our own suffering, as we develop more compassion for ourselves, it's almost an inevitable byproduct that then we have more energy to have compassion for others. That's the formula. That's almost always the way it works. It can also be true. I've been thinking a lot about my best spiritual friend, my BSF, the most venerable Suhita Dharma, who was the first African American to be ordained a Buddhist monk. He was my best spiritual friend, and I have many good ones. He was my best one, and he was my bestie friend. And he just dropped over dead on December 28th in the morning of 2013. Literally, he was the vice abbot of a Vietnamese American temple in the Los Angeles area. And the monk in the room next to him at around 5 a.m. heard this thump and went in, and Bhante was just dead as a doornail. He had a bad heart, and he was gone. His photo is here on the altar, and because he was a benefactor of this temple as well. And he was a person who was trained by his teacher, the Venerable Thich Thien An, who was a Vietnamese Zen master who came to the United States and California very early on, and to help others. And so what Bhante Suhita said was, if I'm feeling bad about myself and I go out and I help somebody else, then I usually feel better. I feel more cheerful. So sometimes we do need to attend to ourselves. There's no doubt about that. And other times it's really good to just try and help someone else in a way that is truly helpful to them. So again, I'm assuming and hoping that we're all here because we seek to heal ourselves, and we can then help to heal others. And I'm somewhat assuming that most of the people here tonight you're here tonight because you feel, perhaps instinctively and wordlessly, or perhaps in a more thought out way, that the practices that we teach here, which are insight meditation, which we've just done, loving kindness or metta meditation, which is very popular here, that's extending loving friendliness to ourselves, to others around us, eventually to all beings. And also the practice of building beloved community, also called Sangha, which means spiritual community, the community of mindful harmony. That we're doing this because we understand that these practices contain the potential and the reality of healing for ourselves and for others. the potential, and the reality. This path never claims to be, or should never claim to be, exclusive of other spiritual paths or practices. It's, again, referring to Bhante Suhita Dharma. He became a Trappist monk when he was 14 and a half years old. He came from a Catholic family. He was in the last of the so-called child monks of the Trappist order, and after Vatican II, he traveled in Asia and encountered the Dharma and became a Buddhist monk. But he said he never stopped being Catholic, and we used to teach a residential people of color meditation retreat 7 days in New Mexico out in the wilderness. And one day, during the Q&A period, someone raised their hand and said, they were very perplexed, and they said, "But I don't think you can be Catholic and Buddhist at the same time. Like, like what if you want to pray? What do you do if you want to pray or if you want to meditate?" And Bhante he had his big glasses, and he just looked out at the person and he said, "If I feel like praying, I pray, and if I feel like meditating, I meditate." This path is a very warm-hearted, it's a very inclusive path, and we can embrace teachings of wisdom and compassion when we recognize their truth and their effect on people, regardless of what they are labeled or if they are labeled nothing at all. So another way of describing healing or coming into a state of grounded, empowered wholeness and spiritual well-being is what the Buddha called freedom, or the great liberation. Specifically in this case, this means the release from, the liberation from stress-related suffering, to use today's language, anxiety, depression, fear, afflictive anger and rage, addictive craving and delusion, or inability to see things as they are. So you'll notice that I said afflictive anger and rage, because this is not meant to say that we should suppress or repress anything. Lots of things make me mad. You can ask my 25-year-old kid. And they kind of should, because there's a lot of injustice, and there are many things that anger is a kind of energy that we can channel. We simply must be aware if we're following this path, if we're harming ourselves or others, which very long-term kind of suppressed rage can certainly raise your blood pressure and cause a lot of health problems. So that's what the Buddha meant by that healing is freedom and liberation from these afflictions, which I hope to you sounds joyful and refreshing, because that's what the effect is meant to be. And later on in August, I'm scheduled to teach the half-day monthly retreat. It's in the morning for committed practitioners. And all that means is that you don't need instruction in sitting or walking or movement meditation. So those periods can be completely quiet. It's a beautiful, quiet morning. And then the teachings that are given that day tend to be more, quote unquote, advanced, or they would be the teachings that would be more easily misunderstood unless they're cultivated properly. Understanding is cultivated. So I'm going to really go for it. And I'm going to do that August half day for committed practitioners on nirvana or nibbana. And that, in this system of thought and these teachings, is not a music band. It means the goal, the freedom that comes when our afflictions die down, and it's often represented as having a very cooling, meant to be a very delightful, cooling, peaceful effect. The Buddha was in an area that, in India, that was probably, the weather was pretty hot. So nirvana was the metaphor. However, it's really not about any kind of physical sensation. It's just about the relief one feels when some big old chunk of anger or embedded suffering or anxiety of some sort just dies down very naturally and then floats off and disappears. You multiply that by a very big amount, and that's some approximation of nirvana or nibbana, or liberation. So I trust and I hope that each of us has had such experiences, even if we have a ways to go, which I certainly do. The basic meditation practice we do here is vipassana or vipassana, also called insight meditation, also called mindfulness meditation in its secularized form. It can be done sitting in a chair or in cushions on the floor. It can be done standing, walking, if people can't walk, and there are forms of movement meditation you can do, and also lying down. And what that means is if we're inclined towards this path, it doesn't leave us with a lot of excuses. Like, oh, well, I've got something wrong with my back and I can't really sit for very long. Hey, no problem. I have a friend who had a terrible back condition. He had a couple of discs in his spine that just started to dissolve years ago. And he's done entire meditation retreats lying down, including eating. So he's very determined, and he just got authorization to teach, which was very joyful because he's really hung in there. So you may have heard stories of meditation practitioners or had experiences yourself of what I call, in my own mind, my own experience, experiences where a big chunk of my karma just dropped off. That's how I experience it. Meaning, if we think of the heavy burdens we're carrying around, the worries, the anxieties, the injuries that we've been unable to resolve or heal or forgive, we can think of them maybe as big, sharp-edged rocks, and we're carrying them around in tote bags and backpacks and rolling dollies, and then every once in a while, during meditation, or at another time, we might experience one of those boulders just dropping away. Boom, gone. It's just like it's dropped over the side of a chasm into a very deep, bottomless pit, and it's just completely gone. So I recently just heard a story of a member of the EBMC Sangha who had this experience in a meditation retreat, residential meditation retreat some years ago. And the total effect has remained, so it wasn't an illusion. Their life really has totally changed. I've had those experiences myself, and in fact, I was very encouraged in my practice because when I started meditation in Ann Arbor, Michigan in 1982, I had just taken the beginner's course in this temple in the fall of 1982, and the priest said to me, we're going to have a 5-day residential meditation retreat in December, and of course you'll want to come. Well, I didn't know anything about it, and I just heard myself say, okay. And I thought, am I insane? Like, I don't really know anything. It was a very strict form of Zen, and I'm pretty tough. So we got up early and went to bed. We used no electricity. I mean, like the refrigerator was on. But during the periods of meditation, we had candles on the altar, and otherwise we used kerosene lamps, which gave a very kind of atmospheric feeling to it. And during the day, we did manual work. So this 5-day meditation retreat started. It was in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It was in December, so the daylight ended probably around 4:30. It was really, really dark, and in this temple, there was no dinner. There was 2 meals a day, and so we had breakfast, we had lunch, and then at the time when there usually would be dinner, there was just a cup of tea for everyone. And so there it was. I had very poor night sight, too. So it was all dark, and there were these dim kerosene lamps, and some folks had come down from the Mother Temple in Toronto, whom I didn't know, and we were in silence, so I didn't find out their names until later. Well, there we were all together, and we drank our tea, and then we went into the kitchen, and each of us washed our cup. And just by rinsing it in a basin of wash water in the sink, and there was no light whatsoever in the kitchen, so the only light that came in was filtered in from the dining room. Everyone was in silence, and already the temple was enveloped in a deep state of meditative concentration, also called samadhi. It's a very deeply concentrated state because there were many experienced practitioners there, and they dropped right into that silence. So I remember I went up and I just rinsed out my cup and I put it in the drain, and then I turned around and a thought flew through my brain, and you know how quickly a thought can go through your brain. And a thought flew through my brain of my hands are wet, I'd like to dry them. And as that thought passed through my mind, there was a member of the Toronto temple, someone I'd never met, who came stepping out of the darkness and placed a dish towel in my hands. It was just instantaneous. And the experience I had at that moment, I can only describe to you as one of knowing with absolute certainty that even though, of course, as a poor person, I need to work to make a living, and that I would need to put great effort forth in my life, I knew also at that moment, absolutely, and beyond the shadow of a doubt, that there was kindness and goodness in the world, and that my needs would be met, and that people and beings in the world would help me on this spiritual path. I knew that. I could feel it in every cell of my body. It has never disappeared, and that was December of 1982. So do not scorn the dish towel the next time you see it, or the wash water when you're doing dishes, because everything that you come into contact with and everything that you do in this path has the potential to precipitate an experience of spiritual awakening. In fact, spiritual healing and liberation are considered to be a universal human experience. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose image is on our altar here at EBMC, in his very last speech, and this is also always really moving to me, on April 3rd in Memphis, Tennessee, the famous speech called "I've Been to the Mountaintop," said, and I'm excerpting here from the end of the speech, but these are his exact words, said, "Well, I don't know what will happen now." So we say in this path, the past is gone, the future is not here. I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. So how many of us can truly say this tonight here at East Bay Meditation Center? I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. So I believe with all of my heart, with all of my soul, and through all of my 33 years of experience as a Buddhist meditator, that this same experience, the disappearing and the dropping away of anxiety, the view of an equanimity gained from having been to that mountaintop, that metaphorical mountaintop from which we can see the vast panorama and the landscape of human life and the way that things are unfolding on this planet insofar as we can know them. That how many of us can say, I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried. I have no anxiety. I have no fear. So I believe that this experience is available to all of us here and now. And that for each of you sitting here tonight, exactly as you are, you don't need to change anything about yourself. I believe that you contain exactly exactly what you need to awaken spiritually. In the tradition of the Mahayana, one of the three great lineages of Buddhism, this is called all beings have Buddha nature. This means you have non-fear and non-anxiety inside yourselves. This is part of your birthright, and it is very possible for you to touch that hidden treasure and bring it forth without having to buy anything, without having to go somewhere special. Because if you are alive, which you all are looking out at you, if you have a body, which I assume you all do, and if you are breathing, a consequence of being alive or a cause of being alive, if you can think, if you can feel, then you have everything you need. So I'm saying this because the purpose of this talk is to give you confidence in yourself. You don't need robes or bells or beads or retreats in beautiful places, although if you have them, those might be of a support and of encouragement to you. I did wear this mala or Buddhist beads on my left wrist tonight, and these came to me actually in a box of belongings from Venerable Suhita Dharma's room after he, actually from his hermitage. He had a small temple in Juarez, Mexico, and it came from that hermitage. And his friend Maggie packed up some of his belongings and sent them to his various spiritual friends. So I wore these tonight to remind me of Bhante. But we absolutely actually don't need any of these things. You can be stark naked and have no money, and you can take a great vow to awaken. And you can practice, and you can spiritually awaken. You can heal. You can see the view from the mountaintop. So what I want to say to you, I'm not here very often at this wonderful Sangha. I want to give this heart teaching to you to really have faith in yourself. With this practice, as I said, there's natural development. There's natural unfolding. There is a natural way that you will learn if you're holding too much tension in a part of your body. There is a natural way that you will learn for yourself and from yourself if you're finding some way that your practice doesn't feel quite balanced. And you can, of course, ask a teacher or ask a senior practitioner. You can read some books, but have faith in yourself that you already have those answers within you. Because the practice we're doing here is a human practice. It was designed for human beings. It's very old. It's been very well road tested. It may not be for everyone, which is fine. And if it is for you, then have faith, have confidence in yourself, and understand that healing and awakening are your birthright, and they are possible for you in this very moment, in the next 5 minutes, when you leave East Bay Meditation Center, before you go to bed, when you wake up in the morning, when you take your shower, when you have your cup of tea, when you go to work, when you play with your children, when you speak with your friends, when you fight with people that you're in conflict with. Awakening is possible in each and every one of those moments because that is the way the practice operates, and that is what it was designed to do, is to cultivate the seeds of awakening that are already within you and to build up your wisdom and your compassion so that true insight can arise. So thank you very much. And we just do have a very, very few minutes. If you have a comment, if you have a question, we'd like to hear from you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the teaching throughout the session tonight. As a person who's new to meditation and new to the East Bay Meditation Center, it has been very helpful. And I also want to thank you for the information that it's possible to be without fear and without anxiety. And my question is, is that the essence of being in an awakened state? Or how would you define what it means to be awakened?
This is my own understanding. Thank you for the question. It's a profound question. And first of all, I would say that in theory, it is a spiritual matter that is ineffable, so no words may indicate, but they will never be able to fully describe. And that having been said, what the Buddha taught is that the state of awakening is a state in which fear, anxiety, and I'm talking about fear as anxiety, not like a giant tiger is running at you, getting ready to eat you up, and you're like, oh, I am really calm. I just, I mean, that would be stupid. You should have adrenaline rush through your body and be like, ah, and run away. But fear in the sense of that anxiety that wakes us up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night, or that comes out of nowhere, or it comes out of somewhere, but there's not a damn thing we can do about it. And so it would be better to calm ourselves down and figure out a plan. So theoretically, yes, awakening is the dying down of fear, of clinging or craving, addictive craving. It is the disappearance of afflictive anger and rage that hurts us and hurts others. And it is also clear insight, which is the dropping away of delusion or ignorance of how things really are. And we can all get flashes of it. I'm completely convinced of it. I'm sure we all have. Children can too. I love to talk to children, and just if you spend some time talking to kids, they have very, very interesting experiences. We have time for maybe one more comment or question.
Thank you for what you shared. What I learned from what you shared about seeing the mountaintop is that oftentimes we pray for things that we either want or pray for something that we fear. And what I've learned is that really just praying for being grateful, and being grateful for what we have or what we don't have, and just being grateful. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And let me ask you a question. Have you seen, there's this video on the internet from a website called Karma Tube on gratitude? Yeah, check it out. It's really, really great. It's a sort of spiritual rap music video on gratitude, and every time I see it, I'll just cry. It's very beautifully done, and it is about how much joy and energy gratitude gives us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Close your eyes or lower your gaze. Let's just go inward to honor our spiritual community that's here tonight, and those who have come before us, our ancestors, and those who will follow in the path that we create, our descendants, sometimes called our ascendants because they're ascending. And to remember as we go forth into the world outside of East Bay Meditation Center, to try to cultivate the seeds of community, of loving kindness, of wisdom, of compassion, and of a balanced outlook or equanimity.